Hello everyone, tonight we are sitting far too close to a wall that's watching you back. The kind of wall that used to be beige but now looks faintly bruised under the lamplight. The kind of wall that holds a portrait you swear wasn't there last night, a faded frame, a delicate canvas, and a figure inside it that knows your name. You are here. You really are. And unfortunately, you probably won't survive. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is there. I'll whisper back eventually. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. It's not the portrait that unsettles you at first, it's the dust. That fine powdered age that wafts around it like skin lost to time. The frame is the wrong kind of ornate, almost too detailed for something that has no signature, no origin, no memory of ever being hung. The wall it rests on was clean yesterday. You think, you hope. But now, the figure in the portrait seems to be waking with the room. You're staring at yourself, not quite. The face is yours, but younger, a little too still. The smile hovers like someone holding in a secret that once released might ruin everything. You lean in to examine the brushstrokes, but there are none. The surface is impossibly smooth like skin that's never been touched by air. You try to lift it to feel its weight, but your fingers pass right through. That's your first warning, not the last, just the politest. The house is old. Of course it is. Built on top of limestone tunnels that once held Roman prisoners, or at least that's what the landlord laughed and said half a bottle into your lease signing. You thought he was kidding, maybe you still do. But there's a kind of memory that lingers in stone and porous bone-colored walls, especially in places where voices have nowhere to go but down. Did you know some cave paintings have twins? Yes, the oldest known depiction of twins comes from El Castillo Cave in Spain. Twin silhouettes with hands overlapped as if one figure bled into another. Some scholars think it was symbolic. Others believe it was literal, an ancient tale of two spirits born together but destined never to meet. And a few researchers, the particularly awkward ones at conferences, argue whether the second silhouette was ever drawn by a human at all. That's how it begins with the portrait. You think you're looking at art, but it's not a picture, it's a mirror with memory problems. You try ignoring it. You cover it with a towel. That works for a night. You tape the towel down. It's folded on the floor the next morning, damp with something that smells faintly of vinegar and lilies, which is either a perfume or a very passive-aggressive haunting. You try turning the portrait to face the wall, but something keeps turning it back, frame scraping quietly in the dark like the sound of chalk on slate or fingernails dragging themselves out of habit. You text your sister. She laughs. It's just pareidolia, she says, voice crackling through your phone like static dressed in a lab coat. You're seeing what you expect to see. You and your dream-fueled walls again. You don't tell her that the twin in the portrait moved last night, that its eyes were closed at first, that they opened around 2:17 a.m., just before your bedroom door creaked for no reason. You don't tell her that when you whispered her name to the figure, it tilted its head toward you, yes, but also toward your phone, as if it heard her voice too. Instead, you joke, maybe it's just me from the future, trying to warn me about this moldy rental. You both laugh, a little too long. Later that night, you feel the second breath behind your own in the mirror. It fogs when you do, but it doesn't blink when you do, and it doesn't disappear when you leave. You sleep on the couch. You dream of being watched from inside a painting, not as the viewer, but as the viewed, forever posed, forever still, while your twin walks free in the house. A gentle swap, harmless, until you realize your feet don't move anymore and your hands are already made of pigment. By morning, the portrait has changed. The frame is cracked now. Your twin is smiling wider. The background has filled in a familiar room, yours exactly. Even the crooked lamp in the corner. Even the shape you make when you try to leave the frame. You try to photograph it, the camera refuses. The screen shows nothing, except one odd flicker when you move out of frame. A brief glimpse of your twin stepping forward. Closer. You call an appraiser. She arrives wearing gloves, polite shoes, and an expression that says she's seen too many houses with sad wallpaper. She examines it with a frown. There's no paint, she murmurs, no canvas. It's like it was printed onto glass. She doesn't say what she's thinking, but her hand never touches it. She shudders when she leaves. Before she goes, she tells you an old story from her village, how sometimes in her grandmother's time, a child would be born without a shadow, and somewhere nearby, another child would be born with two. It's just a story, she says, forcing a smile. But we were always told never to hang mirrors at the foot of the bed, just in case someone else used it to crawl in. You don't sleep that night. The lights stay on, the portrait stays unchanged. But when the fan clicks on at 3:06 a.m., the cloth you rehung lifts slightly and the twin is gone, not from the frame, from your reflection. The twin doesn't return to the portrait. Not that night, not the next, and not in the places you expect. Instead, it starts showing up in reflections you weren't even looking for. A glimpse in the microwave door. A flicker in the black screen of your laptop. That moment when your shadow splits ever so slightly before sinking back up again. It's always in the periphery, in the half second in the part of your vision that still believes in childhood rules. Don't look under the bed. Don't look into a dark mirror after midnight. Don't blink when you know you're alone, because that's when it happens. The portrait, meanwhile, becomes a static thing. Dust clings to it again. The figure inside looks oddly passive, like it's waiting its turn, not forcing the issue anymore. That should comfort you. It doesn't. You begin noticing slight asymmetries in your own reflection. Nothing huge. Just differences. A freckle that was on the right cheek now on the left. A strand of hair you don't remember bleaching. Your smile when you try it out doesn't rise quite as high on one side. It's still you, but someone else is practicing. One morning your coffee mug is already warm when you reach for it. You live alone. The windows are closed. You joke aloud, "I guess I've started haunting myself." You pause, waiting for a laugh track that never comes. That day, you find something else. In the hallway near the utility closet, you rarely open a trail of faint footprints in dust, bare, human, and half your size. They stop in front of a mirror you didn't realize you owned. Small oval with no hook. It leans against the wall at floor level, catching your ankles like a puddle of memory. You leave it there. You walk away. You do not turn around even when the air behind you starts to feel colder than in front. The hallway hums low and slow. Somewhere a power line breathes. Did you know Neanderthals used ochre to mark bodies for burial? Not just red pigment for art, but for ceremony, for memory. Some burials show clear signs of purposeful placement tools beside the hands, flowers arranged at the shoulders. Even a fossilized lump of red ochre on a child's chest. Scholars still argue whether this was religion or simply routine. One researcher famously mocked for it suggested they were trying to preserve the spirit's mirror self, the invisible twin that the body casts in dreams. You've never wanted to believe in that. But here you are living in a house where your toothbrush moves 6 inches each night. Where the silverware always resets to left-handed orientation. Where your phone's face recognition now works only when you look slightly to the side. You bring in a friend. They're rational, skeptical. The kind of person who knocks on wood but only ironically. They stare at the portrait, then at you, then back. Looks like you, they say. But kind of off. They pause. Did you always have that mole? You don't have a mole, not there. You try laughing it off. My twin's getting ahead of me. She's winning the skin game. Your friend blinks, then frowns. You didn't mean to say she, but you don't correct yourself. That night you dream of falling, slowly. But it's not down, it's inward, into the surface of the portrait. You feel your body flatten like old parchment soaked too long. You see your twin waiting. She's wearing your skin better than you do. She nods once and then you're outside again, staring at yourself from inside the wall. You wake up to your voice speaking words your mouth didn't say. Something gentle, something cruel, something that ends with laughter. A scholar once noted that ancient Etruscan tombs contained double doors carved into the walls. Not entrances, not exits, just illusions of passage. Some believed they were symbolic thresholds for the soul. Others thought they were warnings. Don't open what was never meant to close. You start seeing doors now, drawn faintly in the condensation on windows, sketched lightly in the scratches on your hardwood floor. 2 rectangles, slightly ajar, always facing you. You stop sleeping in the bedroom. You try your sister again. She tells you she's been dreaming about you, that she saw you in a mirror except your eyes were reversed left where the right should be and blinking too late. She's joking, you hope. You ask her if she remembers your childhood drawings, the ones of the 2 girls always holding hands. One always smiling, one always blank. You said it was just you drawing yourself twice, she laughs. Or maybe drawing me. You never drew them. That's the thing. You remember finding them in the crawl space tucked into the slats of the floorboards beneath the bed. Folded pages with your handwriting but not your fingers. Your sister hesitates. You're not sleepwalking again, are you? You haven't in years. But now, some mornings your fingernails are dirty. Your sheets are damp. You wake up standing, once in the hallway, once on the wrong side of the bathroom mirror, staring into it, hands pressed to the cold glass like you were waiting to be let out. Here's something funny. Every time you try to cover the portrait again, the fabric you use disappears. Not immediately, not dramatically, just quietly. It's there 1 hour, gone the next. Replaced sometimes with something else. A child's sock, a lock of hair, once a sketch of you holding someone's hand with no one beside you. You burn that one. You don't check the ash. Last night, your reflection lagged behind you by 3 seconds. You timed it. You cried after. Not out of fear, out of shame. Because when it finally caught up, it smiled. You've stopped calling it a portrait now. It's not. A portrait has an origin, a purpose, a hand that made it. This surface is more like a suggestion that got stuck in your house. A suggestion with teeth. There are no brush strokes, no signature, and still no record of it ever being commissioned or hung. You checked. You even asked the landlord whose face went pale before he offered you 2 months rent-free and muttered something about returning what doesn't belong. You declined. Or maybe you didn't. You can't remember. Things are starting to slip. You find yourself losing time. You look at the clock and it's 11:43 p.m. Then it's 3:07 a.m. and your hands are wet. Not soaked, just slightly dewed, like you've been pressing them against something slick for too long. A window, a mirror, a wall that breathes. You keep catching your reflection where it shouldn't be. The back of a spoon, the car window as you pass the storefront, the tiny chrome cap on your shampoo bottle. Your reflection doesn't always blink. It's not aggressive, it's just ahead of you now, and very, very patient. You start whispering things to it just to see what happens. Are you me? Did you choose me? Are you still waiting? One night it answers, not with a voice, but with a movement. It lifts its hand and knocks. 3 soft taps against its side of the glass. Your mirror doesn't make a sound, but your eardrums ring as if something inside you echoed back. Scholars argue over the practice of soul doubling in ancient cultures. In Egypt, there was the Kai, a spiritual duplicate of the self, born with you and lingering after death. In Finnish folklore, a Etiainen would arrive moments before you did, performing your actions like an echo just slightly ahead. Some researchers still argue whether these stories were metaphors for intuition or confessions of something real. You don't believe in metaphors anymore. You try to leave the house, you make it as far as the front door, but the knob is warm. Not electrically, not dangerously, just body warm, like someone else just left or arrived. You open the door. The hallway outside your apartment has shifted. You notice it immediately. The angles are wrong. The light is slightly bluer than it should be, and everything feels stretched, like the walls took a breath. You take one step forward and hear your foot fall from behind you. You go back inside. You do not look at the mirror. Not the new one you found under the sink. Not the one that appeared on the ceiling above your bed. Not the one in your teacup that still reflects the portrait even when you're not facing it. Instead, you sit in the kitchen with the lights on. You eat dry cereal and wait for sunrise. It never comes. You check the clock. 5:04 a.m., then again 5:03 a.m. The second hand is moving backward, then forward, then stalling. The fridge hums a note that sounds almost like your name if your name were being practiced by someone who doesn't have a tongue. In the corner of your eye, the portrait is breathing. You begin to hear two sets of footsteps when you walk, yours and hers. Did you know that in some prehistoric caves there are footprints of two people, one adult, one child, walking side by side for miles, only for the smaller prints to vanish mid-stride? One theory is the child was picked up. Another says the child walked backward in its own prints, disappearing deliberately. Some say the smaller footprints were never really there, just a trick of overlapping steps and shifting dust. You used to think that was sad. Now you think it's a strategy. You wake up with your shoes on damp with cave water you haven't stepped in. There are scratch marks on the floor leading to the baseboard. They look like tiny fingernails or charcoal etchings made with an impatient hand. You lift the corner of a rug and find a message scratched faintly into the wood beneath. You're almost done. Almost done with what? Be honest. You don't remember painting anything, but you do remember sleepwalking. You remember waking with paint beneath your nails. You remember your hands shaking as you scrubbed them clean and not knowing why you were crying. 3 days ago, you found a second frame in your closet. Empty. Waiting. Last night, it wasn't empty anymore. You recognize the person inside it, but you're not sure why. She looks like you in the way a dream looks like a memory, close but unfinished. Her face is turned just slightly away as if she's waiting for you to call out to her. You don't. Not yet. You're afraid of what she'll do if she turns all the way around. Here's a joke. What did you call a reflection that doesn't belong to anyone? A suggestion with boundary issues. Another joke. Why did the ghost refuse therapy? Because it already had too many unresolved reflections. You tell yourself these jokes as you sit on the floor, knees pulled to chest, staring into a mirror you've never bought in a room you no longer remember renting. The walls feel thicker. The ceiling seems lower. You're not sure what day it is anymore. You're not sure who's been moving your mouth when you speak. You turn slowly to the portrait. It's still there. But now the twin is looking at you. And for the first time since this began, she looks surprised. It isn't surprise like a jump or a scream. It's deeper than that. Quieter. The kind of surprise that looks like recognition. As if you finally caught up to something that's been standing still all along. You stare at her. The twin. The not you. Her eyes are wide, and one hand is raised, palm facing you, fingers apart. It's a gesture of greeting or warning. You copy it slowly, mirror-like, but she doesn't match your motion. She lowers her hand. You don't. And that's when you understand the mirror is no longer yours. You are not the reflection. You are not even in sync. You are the echo now. The twin watches you with something mournful. She looks tired. Not in the way people do, but in the way old doors do. Hinges bent by centuries. Edges worn down by closing and opening when no one was home. You think about how ancient humans painted outlines of their hands on cave walls, negative space left by blowing pigment around the skin. Not a handprint, but a hole shaped like a hand. Scientists have found hundreds. Left hands, right hands, and sometimes handprints that are too small, too symmetrical, as though two were placed at once by one person with borrowed limbs. Some researchers argue the prints were ceremonial. Some say they were just decoration. And one eccentric theory mostly dismissed claims they were meant to confuse something watching from the dark. A decoy, a mimic. You wonder which hand you've been using lately, because it's getting hard to tell. Your handwriting is changing. Notes you leave for yourself aren't in your usual slant. You catch yourself speaking aloud in a tone you don't recognize. There's a softness, a sing-song lilt. It's not unpleasant, just borrowed. Your sister sends a message, a voicemail. Her voice trembles. I saw you again, in the mirror. You were in my room. I know it's not you. You call her back. She doesn't answer. You try the landlord again. His number has been disconnected. The leasing office you visited in person last year is now an empty lot filled with rusted tricycles and a single chair that always faces west. You go looking for help. You go outside. The street is familiar, but not exactly. The cars are parked in different places. The neighbors are still inside, but their silhouettes move like marionettes too aware of their strings. A woman walks her dog, and the dog turns to stare at you with a face you could almost call human, if humans came with no eyes. You go back inside. You find another frame in the hallway. This one is broken. Its glass is cracked in a shape that reminds you of a map or a hand with too many fingers. Inside is a photograph, a real one this time. Faded sepia. You stare. It shows two children, not twins, not even siblings, but holding hands and smiling in the way that people do when they've just done something unspeakable. Behind them is a painting on the wall, a portrait of someone who looks exactly like you, eyes closed. You flip the photograph. On the back, written in a child's hand, "Do not paint her again. Do not give her a wall." You don't remember this picture, but your fingers tremble as though they've held it before. Folklore time. In certain corners of Eastern Europe, there's an old belief that every family has a framed twin, a spirit bound to a painting mirror or shadow inherited from some long-forgotten ancestor. Most of the time, the twin is quiet, just a watcher. But every few generations one escapes, and when it does, someone must take its place. The trick, they say, is to never name it. You made that mistake in section 2. You said she knows. The lights begin to flicker more often now. Always when you try to look at yourself. The mirrors don't crack, but they ripple. The fan turns on by itself and doesn't spin, it shudders. Like something is crawling across the motor. Your voice has become echo-prone. You say hello, and something says hello back. Not late, not early, at the exact same moment. But it doesn't match your tone. You say, "I'm sorry," and the response comes as it's time. And sometimes in the dead hour around 3:33 a.m., you see your twin outside the window walking by. From the inside, you run your fingers along the surface of the portrait. This time it feels like skin. Not cold, not warm, just ready. Here's a joke. What's the most loyal piece of furniture? A mirror. It never leaves you alone. Another joke. Why don't ghosts use calendars? Because they already know your future appointments. A final joke. How do you know you're the real one? You don't. And she's very patient. Your hands feel thinner now, like they've been drawn in charcoal. Your breath doesn't fog the glass anymore. Your phone no longer unlocks for your face. When you talk to friends, they say, "You sound distant, echoey." One even says, "You glitched just now." Your voice looped. You start hearing a song. No words. Just a soft melody that plays from nowhere in particular. Hummed by a mouth you can't see. It's the same one you used to hum to your sister when you were kids, back when mirrors were only for brushing hair, back when no one had ever painted you, back when the house was still yours. Now the portrait smiles, fully, and behind the smile is a doorway. You haven't seen your own reflection in days. Not truly, not without it twitching, not without it blinking just before you do or smiling after you've gone still. It isn't playful anymore. It isn't testing boundaries. It's waiting for you to come to terms with what you already know. You're not the one outside the frame. Not anymore. The portrait has grown. Not in size, but in depth. You can feel it from across the room now, the slow gravity of it, like it's leaning inward toward you, or you toward it. The air gets thinner near the wall as if it's trying to pull your breath first to see if you'll follow. You try to burn it. Of course you do. You gather matches, candles, even incense, because it feels like the kind of ritual that ought to smell like something ancient and citrusy. You light a flame. Hold it close. The frame sighs. Not cracks, Not groans, sighs, like someone exhaling relief or amusement. The fire refuses to touch it. The flame shrinks to a glow, then dies in your hand. The matchstick is still whole. The candle melts inward instead of down. The portrait simply watches. In a last act of hope or theater, you cover the frame again. A thick wool blanket, this time pressed and pinned with binder clips. The good kind from the office supply store that has actual ghosts in the printer aisle. You wait, minutes, hours, nothing happens. You breathe. Maybe it's over. Then you check your reflection, and she's still staring. Not from the portrait, from you. One eye is now hers. You blink and it lags just half a second. You raise your hand and your fingers twitch, uncertain which rhythm to follow. Your voice, when you test it, has a note of someone else's breath riding the edges. You smile just to prove you can. She frowns. You don't remember which one of you did that. Somewhere in your home is a new mirror. Small, oval. You don't recall buying it. It sits on the floor again, just like the one from before. But this time it's wrapped in velvet, black with a tiny silver clasp. You open it. Inside you see a hallway you haven't walked yet. It's familiar. It's yours. But it bends wrong, slopes ever so slightly inward. At the end of it is a door, carved from dark wood, with a handle made of bone. You do not open it, but you understand it's been waiting. The hallway is not in your house, but the mirror is. The Folklore's final detail returns to you now. In the old story of the frame twin, once the reflection has taken root, the only way to restore balance is to invite it in fully or give it something it cannot use. You consider that long into the night. You sit on the floor with the frame. You speak to it calmly, as if to a sister you never met. You tell her your name. You tell her you don't remember hers. You ask if she remembers that humming tune. The one you both used to hear when you were small, when the wind got trapped in the attic beams and sang of places underground. She listens. You hear her hum it back, not through the air, from inside your own throat. That's when you feel the shift. Not a possession, not a takeover, just a soft alignment, like someone's hand sliding into a glove that was always waiting. You look down at your palms. One of them has faint brushstrokes now. Just a shimmer, just a suggestion of oil and pigment. The portrait is empty. The wall is blank. The frame remains. And somewhere behind your eyes, a second set blinks. You walk through the house in silence now. You've learned not to turn too quickly, not to check the mirrors unless absolutely necessary. You brush your hair in darkness. You speak softly with double meaning. You smile at doors before you open them. You listen for humming. When your sister calls again, you answer with warmth. You don't mention the portrait. You don't mention the new reflection that sometimes calls your name before you speak. You just ask how she's been sleeping lately. Better, she says. You sound more like yourself again. You smile. You do. And behind your smile, something watches. Always. There is no final stroke to a painting that paints itself. You walk now in borrowed quiet, your breath a little softer, your shadow a little longer. The twin walks with you, not ahead, not behind, but beside. In mirrors, in memory, in moments that skip like a scratched record humming through the seams of your house. No one asks about the frame anymore. You no longer try to explain it. You've become the part of the portrait that couldn't be painted. A gesture, a reflection, a story that folds back on itself like hands pressed palm to palm almost but never quite touching. And if someone else finds the frame, well, they probably won't survive.